Right, so for this one, we have two formulas. Area is equal to pi r squared, and circumference is equal to 2 pi r, or circumference is equal to pi times our diameter. We already went through why this works, so if you guys are not sure about that, you just have to come and see me for extra help. But what happens is some of you weren't labeling on your last test. You weren't labeling what your area and your circumference was. You just wrote two answers, and I don't know that you know which one's which. So make sure that you are labeling them. So first, if we're going to go ahead and find our circumference, remember the circumference is like the perimeter of the circle. So we're finding the distance around the circle. Since this is giving us our diameter already, we can just go ahead and plug it into the formula of pi times d. So our diameter is 14, so 14 times pi. And remember, you can give your answers to me in pi because that's the exact. So it'll be 14 pi and cm, or you can write it as a decimal, which in this case is 44. If you're going to write as a number and not in pi, round it to your 10th. But this one, when you round it to your 10th, it's actually going to round it up to the whole number of 44. So it'll be 44 centimeters. So it would be our circumference. To find the area, though, we do need to figure out our radius. And remember, our radius is half of the diameter. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So we know our radius is equal to 7. And our area is equal to pi r squared. Well, we just said our radius is 7. So area is equal to pi times 7 squared. And we're only squaring the 7. Some of you in your test squared the pi as well. You see it's pi times our radius squared. So our area is equal to 49 pi centimeters squared. Or if we type this into our calculator and we want to round it, it'll be 153.9 centimeters squared. What some of you also did is you saw this unit square. This is just telling us, like, when we see cm squared, we're saying our units are squared, so we know we're dealing with the area, which means this space here. So what some of you did is you squared that twice. So some of you got this answer, and then because you know that your units are squared, you then squared this again, and you squared 153 again, which is actually raising it to the fourth power. This cm squared is just letting the reader or anyone know that picks it up that, oh, this is the area. So even so we know that that is what our units are in. All right. So when we don't have, and we're just talking about the perimeter, we just leave our units as just a linear term, no power. All right. So for this next one, same thing. It's giving us our diameter. So our circumference is equal to pi times our diameter. So we can say our circumference is equal to 13 pi cm, or you can plug it into your calculator to round it to a decimal of 40.8 centimeters. For our area, though, we need to figure out our radius. So 13 divided by 2 is equal to 6.5. So our radius is equal to 6.5. So area is equal to pi r squared. Area is equal to pi times 6.5 squared. And 6.5 squared is 42.25. So our area is equal to 42.25 times pi cm squared. Now you can leave it like that, or you can type it into your calculator and give it to me as your decimal. So our area, if you were to do that, is 132.7 cm squared. All right, so just make sure you're labeling them properly and make sure that you are using your radius and you're not squaring it twice. All right, so for this next one, it says Rose wants to surround her circular garden with a fence. So when we want to surround her circular garden with a fence, we're only talking about this here. So that means that ultimately we're going to need our circumference formula. And that's 2 pi r, or circumference is equal to pi d. So now we can see, okay, how can we get that information? It tells us that the area of the garden, so this is equal to 144 pi. So our area we know is pi r squared. So remember then, that means our area is 144 pi. So we need to figure out what our radius is. Well, if I see pi on both sides, I can divide both sides by pi, and they're going to cancel each other out. So now I have that, well, my radius squared is equal to 144. And as we talked about in class, now we need to take the square root. So our radius is then equal to 12. So now that we know what our radius is, we can then figure out our perimeter by plugging it into our formula. So circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So circumference is equal to 2 pi times 12. Or our circumference is equal to 24 pi feet. Or we can type it into our calculator and give it to us as a decimal of 75.4 feet. So for this one, since they didn't explicitly tell us what our radius was, we need to figure it out. And we could figure it out because they gave us enough information to what the area was. And since we knew the area, that allowed for us to solve for a radius, which then we plugged into our circumference to figure out. the final answer.